En el valle de Pojoaque fui nacido. En la placita del rancho me crié. Con la sangre de Cristo a mi cabecera y el río Grande a mis pies. Yo soy Marcos Trujillo. A su servicio aquí estoy. Lo que ustedes quieran conmigo, a ese camino yo voy. Ay, aquel día de San Antonio, aquel otro de San José, Nuestra Señora de Guadalupe y el Sagrado Corazón de Nambé. Mira, aquí vienen los matachines. Vamos todos a la función. I used to see the stomping of the feet in the ground, and I used to think, that is wonderful. Look at all those rocks just being banged into the ground. Look at all those memories. Look at all that tradition. Look at all that life. And when I dance the dance, and I tell my grandma, I'm going to go dance the Matachines, the smile that crosses her face just seems to make it all worthwhile. And when I put on the uniform, a warmth seems to permeate my whole body. You know, it's not a matter of understanding the historical perspective of the dance, but it's giving impetus to the traditional and cultural aspects of Hispanic life in the Pojoaque Valley in northern New Mexico. It's religious in nature. It binds the community. It's colorful, and it's catchy. The tunes are catchy.
Each Matachine comes from a family. For example, Victor is a Lujan, Marcos is a Trujillo, I'm an Herrera. So it's not like just one individual is involved. We're involving the whole family. We're bringing in the whole Lujan clan on this side, and we're bringing in the whole Trujillo clan and the whole Herrera Gonzalez clan on this other end. So the Matachine group brings the whole thing together, the whole community together. It's a joyous occasion all the way.
This dance is a reflection of the history of our people, shouts Rudy Herrera in the character of the old man, as Los Matachines del Rancho take their places for the beginning of the dance. But the reflection is clouded by centuries of daily living on a hard and isolated frontier. And for 400 years, it has been virtually ignored by the writers of history. Where the Matachine tradition survives, it survives as a habit of the generations. No one is sure anymore where the dance came from or what it really means.
people think that it has a religious significance. Originally, it didn't. It was a folk dance. Look, just like folk dances in any part of the world. But I imagine that the Indians of Mexico, since their own dances had a religious significance, they attached a religious significance to the Matachines. And then when they came to New Mexico, most likely the New Mexicans also, because of that, attached some religious significance. But as far as I knew, it didn't mean anything but a spectacle on feast days.
My father played this violin before he passed, and he says that this Matachines was originated in Saudi Arabia by the Muslims, and the Muslims were traveling all over Europe, so they brought it into Spain, and the Spaniards brought it over to the Aztecs, and Montezuma and his wife Malinche were visiting the Indian pueblos up in northern New Mexico, and they found that the pueblos weren't celebrating Christmas at all. So they taught the music and the dance to the Indian people so they could do it every year in memory of Montezuma and the Lord Jesus Christ. So since then, we've been doing it every year.
Whatever its origins, the Matachine tradition has long been firmly connected to the Catholic faith. At the Indian village of Tortugas, near Las Cruces, it celebrates December 12th, feast day of Our Lady of Guadalupe, patron saint of Mexico, and of many of these small southern New Mexico communities that were once a part of Mexico. In the remote Copper Canyon of the Mexican state of Chihuahua, Tarahumara Indians dance the Matachines for Our Lady of Guadalupe, Christmas, and Epiphany. The Matachines at Bernalillo perform on August 10th to honor their saint, Lorenzo. And in Alcalde, a small village on the Rio Grande halfway between Santa Fe and Taos, the dance is performed on December 27th. Here, as in most places, the celebration begins the night before. The Matachines appear at the head of a procession, carrying the figure of the Saint Antonio through village streets past fires burning as symbolic stations of the cross. As the procession approaches each fire, a gunshot barks there in the darkness, and then its sound quickly disappears as the cortege moves on to the next station of light. At the last fire, the dancers turn the procession back to the church, and it fades with the song of the praying into the darkness.
One hypothesis is that it came from Montezuma to the Taos Pueblo, that Montezuma flew to the Taos Pueblo on an eagle and brought them the dance. I'm sure that is an elaborated form of mythology, but it is known that messengers came to New Mexico from Montezuma's territory, and they wore eagle feathers to designate that they were a messenger. So it'd be very easy over the years of oral history to change that to the fact that Montezuma flew to Taos on an eagle. That's a very interesting hypothesis, and I would like to be able to find more verification that maybe that really did happen. Or did it come from Spain? Did it come from Spain to Mexico, and then did the priests bring it up with their explorations? That's certainly very possible. Other theories not really theories because they haven't been proven. Other hypotheses are that it really didn't come at all. Nobody brought it. That it's an archetypal phenomena. That there seems to be a need for a group of people in the development of the culture to express good over evil. And one of the ways of expressing this good over evil is through a dance drama, which the Matachines is.
The popular view is that the dance came from Spain, from the hometowns of conquistadors and early Spanish colonists who brought it to the Americas. It had come to Spain as a Moorish folk dance in the early 700s when the North Africans invaded and conquered the country and dominated it for 8 centuries after. By 1492, when the Christian armies finally drove the Moors out, Islamic art, science, and folk customs were legacies of the Moorish occupation. But by then, the Matachines dance had become a Christian morality play, depicting the struggle against the Moorish infidels. With the Christians back in power, the Matachines tradition apparently didn't survive in Spain, at least not as a religious celebration. But it flourished in the New World, and probably because it had become, or would become, more religious than social.
It would be hard to separate one from the other, since in colonial Spain there was no separation of church and state, and the divine interpenetrated everyday life, and so one really couldn't say it came from one element or from the other. What is known is that when it got here, the Franciscans began to interpret different elements of the dance, which had always been a kind of conflict dance between good and evil, and interpret the different sides as according to the situation they found themselves in. For example, the girl in the dance, which is known as Malinche. Of course, the name goes back to one of the people that was very instrumental in the conquest of Mexico. Her name was Malinche, and she was an Indian who assisted Cortés in the conquest of the Aztecs by being a translator for him. And so this girl dressed in virginal white represented the impulse of Christianity, the missionaries' fervor, the desire to bring light and truth to the Native Americans who were under a cloud of superstition, they thought, and error. It became a catechetical tool.
And they tried to replace their indigenous dances with something that was more acceptable to the missionaries. This was one thing that was probably more acceptable. Besides that, the Indians probably welcomed it because it's a very colorful ceremony. Once they adopt some ceremony, they can apply whatever religious connotation they wish, whether it's indigenous or Catholic to it, and they do.
As it evolved across the years, they, first of all, transferred the scene from Spain to Mexico. And the bad guys were no longer the Moors, but the heathen Indians who would not listen to the new Christianity. And therefore, certain things needed to be added to make it more in keeping with church. And so, for example, they added Malinche, which was not an original figure, but she represents the Lady of Guadalupe or the Virgin Mary in the New World. So little things like this started coming into the dance. The fact that originally what is now called a palma used to be a shield in the ancient dance. It now represents 3 persons and 1 god, and so the church used it as a form of teaching.
It became indigenous and picked up different characters, different interpretations, different meanings. And the troops before in New Mexico also are indigenous to their valleys, to their communities, to their surroundings. And each individual, the way he interprets, is also indigenous to that interpretation. I dance it
because it evolved and by the Tarahumara Indians in the state of Chihuahua dancing it. And it's a totally different dance than we dance, except for the Moorish influence on the costumes. And they have a different reason for dancing, and probably their history is different. We do know that it evolved from Spain, But like you say, there's as many histories as there are writers.
For every present-day interpreter of the Matachines dance drama, its history and meaning are only collections of best guesses. One of the tradition's greatest mysteries is why, during the centuries it was such a vital part of life and faith on the Spanish colonial frontier, the meticulous record keepers of the Spanish government and the Catholic Church hardly mentioned it, never documented it.
So the answer is nebulous, but the people that were literate didn't write about it. The people that were non-literate that were performing it couldn't. Unless some breakthrough comes, some new document, I just don't think we're going to learn that much more about the history in Europe.
The villain in the Matachine dance drama as it has evolved and is now played out in pueblos and Hispanic villages of northern New Mexico. He is El Toro, the bull. El Toro, like Malinche, apparently wasn't part of the Matachine tradition in Europe. Perhaps he was added only after the dance made its way to the upper Rio Grande Valley. El Toro is the untamed beast that prowls the edge of order, the contrasting evil to Malinche's goodness, as he tries to disrupt with mischief the intricate weaving of the dance, its ever-repeating measures ground out by guitar and violin. The principal dancer, El Monarca, the king, who may have once been a Moor, is now Montezuma, overlord of the Aztecs when the Spanish came. The dance, which is usually performed in front of a church, is said to represent the struggle of the Monarca to accept Christianity. The dance takes its name from the two lines of dancers that provide the loom for this tapestry. They are called Matachines, sometimes danzantes.
The word Matachine itself is of strange origin. The Italians have one called Matachino, which means a masked dancer. But if we take it to its Moorish roots, mutwa-jin. Mutwa in ancient Arabic means masked, and jinn, like the genie in a bottle, it means spirit. So it means a masked spirit.
The veiled face is pointed out when researchers talk about the Matachines' Moorish roots. It does seem like the history of the dance could be traced by the various parts of its costume, for surely the costume evolved with the dance as it made its way from Spain to Mexico and up to the northern Rio Grande Valley. But so far, not much has been learned by that.
It's a puzzle to me, quite frankly.
We never know. Ribbons could have been added, yet they could have been original. We don't know. The shape of the helmet looks like a bishop's mitre. It could have been more turban-like originally. We don't know.
The mitred hat and the ribbons would have been Spanish. The almohadas or the leggings would have been Indian. The scarf across the face would have been Arabic. And I think the scarves across the shoulders would be very Mexican.
Many people believe that the Matachines was originally a sword dance, and that the palma held in the left hand is what is left of the shield, and the rattle is what was the sword, and that it is a form of sword dance.
The most striking part of the costume is the headdress, sometimes shaped like a bishop's mitre, sometimes they are crowns. These coronas are remarkable assemblages of beads, jewelry, Christmas ornaments, wire lace to a frame and a headband. can't be read here, but there is, in the exquisitely finished details of this cloth, the shadow of an unseen character in the Matachine dance drama. Here is where you see the women of the community. In the finely strung beads and sequins and handed-down necklaces and one-only earrings, also perfectly framing an occasional treasure. And in the painstaking embroidery of starched and flawlessly ironed pillowcase leggings and creaseless capes without a tangle in the fringe. Here, written as a footnote in this most remarkable part of the Matachine dance, is the role women have traditionally played.
So you've been involved in the dance for a long time.
Very much.
What do you...
All I liked.
Right.
No fingers. Blowing and pinning pins. Then the two capitanes in front, the two in the back, take the pillowcases. The prettier pillowcases that you can find. We usually embroider ours and make them, a little colorful.
Right.
The more colorful, the better. A lot of ribbons. We go through all the stores picking up the ribbons.
Every time that we go perform anywhere, there's the wives, the girlfriends, the mothers, the sisters, all these women behind us dressing us, helping us put on the makeup or whatever, and giving us the support. I feel that they should be given some recognition in this thing.
But in the Matachine tradition, the role of the women is changing. In a growing number of groups, women are dancers.
My pills! You got them! There's some balls! What do you do with your pills? Yes! I don't have any more.
Of all characters in the Matachine play, the most complex and perhaps interesting are the abuelos, the old ones, the ritual clowns.
The ritual clown is supposed to control the situation however he sees fit. People are expecting humor. They also are showing respect. And they also have almost a hate-love relationship with the clown. They do. That's what a ritual clown is and has been all throughout history.
From Hawaii! From Hawaii! Somebody pissed my butt.
The abuelo is the outrageous person. During the olden times, women, for example, were kind of to be seen and not heard, and also they were not to listen to off-color jokes and so forth. So the abuelo, some of the abuelo's functions is to go in and whisper obscenities and so forth in women's ears and just be literally outrageous. Communication between the crowd and the dancers. You have to. It's a very viable bond that the abuelo plays right in there. He is the communication. He's the actual physical communication between the dancers and the crowd.
Just like the clowns are in full charge of most dances that you'll see at an Indian pueblo, and you do not disobey them. The Indians don't, and you don't. And if you disobey an abuelo, he'd probably make you sorry for it by making a figure of ridicule.
The abuelo has to learn the whole dance, number one, so he can fill in case there's nobody else. At the same time, the abuelo is the distraction. We all make mistakes, and we lose steps, and some people are out of steps. The abuelo is constantly looking at all the dancers. If one of them is out of step, he goes right alongside him and sets him back in step. Keeps costumes straight. The abuelo keeps communication between the dancers and the musicians. the abuelo keeps the thing rolling constantly all the time in our group. I feel that one of my primary functions within the group is to keep the whole momentum going from the beginning to the very end. Plays the part of the boogeyman or the disciplinarian within the children, the small children. And that's one of the big reasons he has his whip. When a kid doesn't want to learn his catechism, you can simply say, we'll call the abuelo. So he's got this whole enforcing and discipline role.
It's the abuelo who finally puts an end to El Toro's mischief. First he shoots him. Then he reduces him to a steer. Next, he jubilantly presents El Toro's losses to some woman who has caught his eye in the crowd. El Toro gets up and nonchalantly walks away, and the final dance goes on. What this all means is anybody's guess.
We're not really sure what each of the significance is. I know Malinche is supposed to represent good against the evil of the Torito, which the Torito represents. Then the abuelos. She dances to the Matachines, trying to influence the good on them. And then the Torito does his part in trying to influence the evil in his part. But the actual significance, who knows?
There is a dramatic significance to the dance, but I think that can be largely personal.
Photographer Douglas Hall has watched the Matachines for 11 years through the window of his home on Alcalde's Main Street, and through camera lenses, a point of view he's held considerably longer as photographer and author of a dozen books that have taken him around the world following subjects he calls outsiders. None of them, Hall says, surpass as photographic subject the appeal of the Matachines.
One of the things that makes the dance really attractive to me as a photographer is that it presents a great number of forms and of dark, light, and color, and the balance between these and the motion of the dance, and the unusual faces that each of the figures has. And those are the things that really make it work.
You could say a lot of the history of is based on other art. And artists are interested in these kinds of things because they have all the qualities of an art form in themselves, and that's partly why they'll become interesting subjects.
Peter Garland is one of America's best-known young composers. His work is widely performed in California, New York, Europe, and Japan. He's classically trained and a prominent scholar of Mexican regional and Native American music. The piece he's playing has been recorded and is considered a major work in his career. It's called the Matachine Dances.
I'm very attracted to a kind of lyrical style of music, and this is nothing if not lyrical. It's almost lyrical and nothing else. I mean, it's just completely lyrical. I mean, there's very little musical development. It's almost all just repeating melody that continuously repeats, and the sort of accumulative effect of that kind of repeating is this kind of buildup of serenity and sort of melodiousness.
Peter Garland and Doug Hall are both outsiders to the Matachine tradition, but they've both been touched by it in different and personal ways. In the front yard of an 85-year-old alcalde great-grandmother, the Matachines dance. She isn't able to go to the church to watch the Matachines perform, so they bring the dance to her, giving her back a tradition she first remembers seeing when she was 7 and has been a part of her life ever since.
All she can say is, I am very, very happy about it.
This is teacher Emily Valdez's 6th grade class at Arroyo Seco Elementary School. A month ago, most of them had never seen Matachines. Now they are Matachines, having learned the dance for their school's Christmas in New Mexico program. They borrowed the costumes from the Matachine dance group of Arroyo Seco, a group which itself was only formed 3 years ago. Ms. Valdez's class learned the dance in just 2 weeks and performed it several times over the holidays.
Describe to me the character of the Malinche. What does the Malinche do?
Dance.
Have you ever been a Malinche before?
No.
Have you ever seen a dance before?
No.
What do you think?
Pretty good.
Can you tell me a little bit of the history of it, as much as you know?
It got brought by our ancestors. It came from Spain, I think. And our ancestors brought it and dancing it.
Can you fight the bull?
Mm-hmm. His guys get a cut off his abuelita.
Why in the world would you do that?
He said to.
Ms. Valdez's 6th graders have the 3 central facts of the Matachines down. It came from Spain as a part of their heritage, it's fun, and then there's that business about the bull. By 1957, the Matachines of El Rancho had stopped dancing. The young dancers then were leaving the valley for schools and jobs in the cities and out of state. They were leaving other villages and other valleys, too. By the early 1970s, only a few Matachine groups were left along the upper Rio Grande. Then something happened. Fewer young people were leaving the valley, and some of those who had left were returning. Both had renewed interest in their cultures. Marcos Trujillo stayed in El Rancho after college, married a woman from Española, and took a job at Los Alamos, to which he commutes 40 miles daily. Rudy Herrera came back from California, finished and moved into a small farmhouse he had started to build in the early 60s, and married a schoolteacher from Massachusetts. They now own a surrounding 50 acres and an assortment of pets and barnyard animals. Rudy wants to be a farmer. Like other Hispanics and Indians of their generation, Rudy and Marcos are trying to hold on to the best of 2 dissimilar cultures and not finding it easy.
The contour of change is quite drastic from that environment to this environment, in that at home, you know, the identity with the surroundings is a lot more intense. You know, you go home, I have a 94-year-old grandma that doesn't know how to speak a word of English. I belong to the Cofradia of La Santísima Trinidad that's been in existence since the Spanish settled the Pojoaque Valley. And the books that I read at home are Padre Jose Antonio Martinez, you know, something that takes me back into history. The reading and research that I do here is job related. It has to do a lot with state-of-the-art type of computer capabilities. A human being is an adaptable animal, and I'm just real grateful that I live within the proximity of Los Alamos National Laboratory that makes it easy for me to commute and work up here. But if you look around my office, there are reminders of my native existence, my native customs, my native culture, and that's something that I will never forget, that I will never leave behind.
For a while, Rudy also worked at Los Alamos, but last year he quit his job to try and make it on the land.
I grew up in a farm just not very far from here, a little farm, and we raised all our own meat, we raised our own crops, we farmed with horses. I grew up, got out of high school, and I wanted to go into a career. I wanted to be a teacher, really, is what I wanted to do. Needed to and wanted to go to school, so I abandoned the farm life. I abandoned the ways of the traditional ways and the cultural ways of doing things. And I went into the mainstream of America, and for many years I dreamt of coming back, of starting to do the same things again, going back into horses and raising chickens and the freezer with turkeys in it that we'd raised and vegetables that we'd done. Now I'm attempting to get back into it full-time, although I know that I can't leave the modern world. I still need to drive an automobile, and I still need to make some sort of an income. But we will preserve this way of life, this traditional way of life, so it doesn't slip by us and it's not buried and gone, as many of the other things have gone.
I was lucky enough to have been exposed to the tail end of the original traditions, the original cultures of my people in the valley. When I was growing up, the faith was so intense. It just grew. Nowadays, the exposures are not that intense. We're losing customs that were prevalent in our daily Hispanic communities 30 years ago. And that's why I'm making sure that my children, their first language is Spanish. And I love to revive the Matachines. I love to participate in oraciones. I love to belong to cofradías. And I take my kids along with me so that they will get a little taste of what the Hispanic culture is all about.
The Matachine dance is one of the things that I'm heavily involved with in trying to preserve, and it's one of the things that had died already and has been revived by a bunch of younger people, the generation you're looking at, getting together and say, hey, we're going to lose this thing. How come nobody has danced Matachines in all this time? Let's do it. Pedro Roybal still knows the steps. Marcos' father still knows the steps. Mr. Gomez has the music and so forth. Let's do it.
We were very fortunate that the last time when there was that impasse for those years, that it was not lost. Let's remember, there wasn't a lot of recording equipment and things like that, and when songs began to be lost, it's very difficult to go back and to reconstruct them. Nowadays, now that we have cameras and we have recorders and all kinds of things. Now these things are documented. It wasn't like that before.
When we first revived the dance, the first dance that we did was for San Antonio de Padua. We walked into the church when Mass was ending and to lead the priests and the people in procession. I mean, that was, to me, one of the most wonderful feelings of my life. I could feel the tears streaming down my eyes because I felt so intimately involved with that religious celebration, with the community, with the unity, with the binding of everybody that was in that church.
In fact, I had never even heard of the Matachines till I married Mark 6 years ago. And at first, when I first saw the dance, I didn't understand it, you know. But the more they danced, the more I learned about them. Then I read about them, so that's how I understood the dance more. Like Mark said before, it's been passed on. You know, his grandpa danced, his father danced, his only brother dances. And I think it's, you know, we want to just carry it on, you know, have the kids dance and maybe their kids. You know, I think we should try and keep it in the family. The Malinche that dances now has been practicing with Crystal, and she's been learning it, and I think it's beautiful. She's very determined to learn, and she's doing real good. I think she's just about ready to dance. I guess I'll be the only one from the family that won't dance.
It's not an explanation. It's a passing on of a love that we have for the dance. A love for the dance flows out, and they grab onto it, and it becomes part of them, and they continue the tradition.
What are the things that you have to do today that you have to remember when you're dancing? What does Mama always tell you? Smile. Look at the public and put a big smile on it so you're all serious and dead, okay? Okay? Yeah. And don't be tugging at your dress or pulling the things down. The ribbon, okay? Okay. It's a really important day.
come the Matachines. Let's all go to the celebration. I remember my grandmother as she personified all my native traditions. Oh, what wonderful memories of such a beautiful valley. The smiling faces that surround me are full of love and happiness. Thank God who gave me life for this grand opportunity of being born and raised in this valley of kindness. The world has four corners, and that's the way the wind will always blow. But where my sweat runs, in Pojoaque, in El Rancho, in Ambe, my blood will always flow.